we have reached season 7 in my string of Cheers reviews, and I'm pretty excited because, well, there are two reasons. The first is that I just absolutely love the show, but the second is that I feel like this, for me, is when the show really picked off, or picked up or took off, however you want to say that. What I mean by that is that while I loved the 6 seasons that came before this, with the first 5 seasons, I kind of started to get really bored of everything being about Sam and Diane. And then with season 6, we get Rebecca. I am obsessed with Kirstie Alley. That made me ridiculously happy. But obviously with season 6, we're still getting to know her and, learning about who she actually is. With season 7, the seeds have been planted. It's time for things to really take a new direction in terms of the characters and how they relate to one another. And we definitely start off with a bit of tension between Sam and Rebecca. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything in this for this season, but if you haven't seen the previous seasons, there may be some spoilers. So it starts off here with Rebecca being fired, basically, with Sam back in charge of the bar. Obviously, Sam being in charge of Cheers is just how it should be. I don't think anybody would have ever been upset that Rebecca was no longer in charge. But there is the possibility that Rebecca is going to actually step up again. And I think Rebecca in this is when she really, really starts to show her neediness. When we first meet her, she seems very headstrong and very confident and very sure of herself. But as the seasons progress, as you will know if you've seen Cheers all the way through, she becomes very needy, very whiny, very self-doubting, and I love her. I'm not faulting her. I love her. She's just not the character we thought she was. One of my favourite bits of character development. I absolutely love her. So there are a lot of really great things that happen with Sam and Rebecca. By default, I nearly said Diane. We also have an interesting storyline with Carla, because Carla, obviously we have Eddie LeBec here, played by Jay Thomas, and his relationship with Carla is a pretty interesting one, and one that I think has always been quite fascinating to watch, and to this day I can't quite work out if I liked Eddie as a character. I liked him enough that he didn't ever ruin any episodes, but it's interesting to see the way he brings out certain aspects of Carla, because until this point I feel like she was very cynical, very rarely smiled unless it was at somebody's downfall. With this one, we have some really great character development there. I'm not going to spoil any of the specifics that happen, of course. Moving on to Frasier and Lilith. Lilith is in this. I was going to say something that will be a spoiler for her character. I won't spoil that. But I will say that I love how much Lilith we are getting. She's slowly on her way to becoming one of the main characters. I can't remember when she became part of the title sequence. I don't believe it was this early on. I think it was maybe 1 or 2 seasons down the line where Baby Neuwirth actually had her name in the opening titles. But still, she's obviously quite an important individual here. One of my favourite scenes or episodes in this is actually episode 6, titled Norm, Is That You?, where Norm decides, or Norm is able to do some kind of painting and decorating. And Norm as a character is really interesting because sometimes he seems like this brilliant accountant who has everything together, and the next thing he's just picking up odd jobs to get by, and I never really know where to place Norm in terms of his career. Norm is my favourite character, if I haven't said that before. Really, really fascinating character, and I absolutely love him. There is a bit about Norm being suspected to be gay, which obviously we know he isn't. But it's interesting that Cheers kind of hit upon a slightly more serious subject. They don't often do that. And usually when they do that, it's a product of its time. But I really liked that episode, and I thought it was pretty great. The episode where Cliff goes to hospital, I thought was so heartbreaking because of, just the way the others treated him, or perhaps lack thereof. John Ratzenberger is absolutely brilliant. This, for me, is not my favourite Cliff season. I think I really liked Cliff in the early seasons, and then I really liked him in the later seasons. But here, kind of middle of the road, middle of the show, middle of the road for Cliff. Some interesting character development, but definitely not as strong as certainly in other aspects. We get our second Bar Wars, and this one, of course, shows the Cheers gang trying to outdo Gary's Old Town Tavern. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't really care about Bar Wars. I've never found those episodes that interesting. I've been curious about them and keen to see the outcome, but of all of the episodes, that recurring thing just doesn't bother me that much, apart from one. There was one Bar Wars that I found really thrilling, but it's in a different season, so I won't discuss that here. Another one of my favourite episodes here is Adventures in Housesitting, which is episode 11. And Rebecca is pet sitting for Mr. Sheridan, her boss, played by Michael Curry. And there is this pretty fascinating dog called Buster. And Woody tries to help out by bringing in Satan, who is a very similar looking dog, but is not the same dog, and things kind of go a bit awry, and I'm not going to spoil what happened, but there's something about that episode that I really, truly, thoroughly enjoyed. We do get Kelly in this, played by Jackie Swanson, of course, and I do think Woody's relationship with Kelly in the early days is quite weird, and I kind of want to comment on it, but I can't really comment on it without spoiling things from the future seasons. But I will just say I never really liked Kelly from the beginning. There was just something about her that irritated me, but I do think she was good for Woody. So I feel like when we watch them interacting, it's nice to see Woody almost coming out of his shell. I feel like she gave him a new lease of life. And she does kind of push some interesting character development for Woody. But honestly, my favourite Woody Harrelson scenes are when he is behind the bar and he just says things that are really unpredictable. I'm not going to say any more about season 7 because I think if I go into any more detail about specific episodes, it might spoil it. But I will say that ultimately for me, this season, is all about Rebecca, her character development, some development in her relationship, friendship, working partnership with Sam, and then maybe about Woody and Carla's relationships. It is very much a relationship-centric episode. Before this, it was obviously very much about Cheers, the future of the bar, who was going to own it, what was going to happen, would the staff have to wear costumes forever, by which I mean uniforms, odd word choice for me. But this one, we now have a chance to get into the characters a little bit more, and we obviously get a lot more Lilith. I don't think Frasier's character development was very much here, but certainly seeing a lot more of Lilith gave us more information about their relationship and what we may be able to expect as the episodes progress. It's fantastic. I think this is definitely one of my favourites. I think this is one of my favourite seasons. Obviously, a lot of this is directed by James Burrows, which makes me exceptionally happy. In fact, I think the whole thing might have been directed by James Burrows, who is just a god. Andy Ackerman directed The Cranemakers. Apparently, also, this aired in 88-89, at which point David Angle, Peter Casey, and David Lee actually left the show. They went on to create Grub Street Productions, and that produced both Wings and Frasier. I love Wings. Frasier is my favourite sitcom ever, but I'm halfway through watching Wings. I'm further than that. I'm on season 5 now, and it's absolutely amazing. So if you like Cheers and Frasier, definitely check out Wings. But for now, if you haven't seen season 7 yet, I hope I've whetted your appetite a little bit. It's absolutely fabulous. I can't fault it. I love Rebecca. It's pure gold.